Welcome to The Trader, a Spotify Top 10 Traitors podcast. My name's Matthew. I'm a writer working in unscripted TV development, and I am a 100% faithful fan of the multi-award winning hit TV competition series The Traitors. This podcast features deep dives into every episode of the show, as well as interviews with contestants. And this is a brand new season of the podcast. Hooray! And it will be dedicated to season 2 of The Traitors New Zealand. How exciting. To help me do that, I've enlisted the one and only David Bloomberg.
Hello, I'm David Bloomberg, and I am a 100% traitorous fan. I've been covering reality TV for over 24 years. I had to update that since the last time we talked. I've, of course, been doing so in newspaper columns, on my own reality TV websites, on podcasts, on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, and on Twitter and similar platforms. So for those of you who don't know me yet, now you know me.
And we are going to do something kind of a little bit different today because we will talk about episodes 1 and 2 all in one episode here for the Traitors. So I'm going to talk us through episode 1, and then David, you're going to take the lead on episode 2. We've got a few things before we get there though. I am going to follow up a little bit on my previous episode. Last episode of the podcast was just sort of a giant news episode of little bits of information from Traitors World all over, and I made fun of it at the time, but the Traitors US actually went ahead and won 4 Critics' Choice Real TV Awards. It won Best Competition Series, Best Ensemble Cast in an Unscripted Series, Best Show Host for Alan Cumming, and Alan Cumming also won Male Star of the Year. Sadly, Phaedra was nominated for Female Star of the Year, but no win for Phaedra. And I just was also going to add that it's quite exciting here in the UK because filming on the next season of Traitors UK and Traitors US, so season 3 for both of those, has just finished. So filming is complete. But we have to wait quite a while. They are not going to air until early 2025 by the sounds of it. So it's weird because we know the cast for US already, but we have to now wait like 6 months before we actually see any of it.
Yeah, it was interesting that I mean, and I know obviously you talked about this, but it was interesting that they did their own cast reveal after it had been mostly leaked online already. And I think they just decided, well, if someone's going to get the social media views, might as well be us.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that you didn't talk more about your good friend Boston Rob being on since, you didn't even think he existed in the past. So
yeah. Now I have to accept that Boston Rob is a real person and not just a lie you invented. But I didn't talk too much about it because I know that when the next season of Traitors US comes around, of course you will be able to fill me in on all of the stuff that I really need to know about these characters. So
yes, about the Survivor and Big Brother people, yes. About the housewives,
not so much.
Nah, not so much.
Now, we have one more thing to set up before we start talking about this new season of Traitors New Zealand. Listeners of the podcast will be very familiar with this, but you never know. Someone may be joining us for the very first time. We are going to play our own game within a podcast about a game. It is the Trader Traitor. So from here on in, David and I have a not so secret mission to tell a lie to one another throughout the podcast. The lie has to be a fabrication or a made up fact, big or small. It could be about the traitors, it could be about ourselves, it could be about anything. However, our lie has to be a fake fact. It can't be a fake opinion, so we can't pretend we feel or think a certain way about a player or about an event. Yes, fake facts, not fake thoughts and feelings. David, we've done this many times before.
Yes.
Are you ready to betray me once more?
We'll find out.
We will. I'm ready. I'm absolutely ready to betray you.
Okay. Well, yes, I'm always ready to betray, but
In that case, I think we're ready. I think we're ready to go ahead with this new season, Traitors New
Yeah.
Zealand, Season 2, Episode 1. Here we go. We start off with well, first of all, I notice it's a new house. It's Claremont Manor, it's called. New house, new prize, $100,000 this time. Season one, the
Yes.
prize fund was $70,000, I believe. New missions by the looks of it. We get a montage of things that are coming up this season.
Hmm.
We get a montage of round table moments, celebrations, commiserations. I sort of want to avert my eyes actually at this point because I don't want to see who's still around, who's celebrating what. I mean, I'll never
Yeah.
remember, but
Yeah. I was surprised that they showed some of those because it kind of gives away at least who makes it past the first one.
yeah,
If you pay enough attention, and there are always people online who are going to pay enough attention.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, but one other new thing is that the Traitors New Zealand did something that is the opposite of what most shows do. They went from a pseudo celebrity cast to a no celebrity cast,
yeah.
which it's New Zealand. They may have just run out of celebrities after the first show, but I think that I like that. And, I wish that I know the US is never going to go away from celebrities. It's a different show. That's it. That's all we could say about it. I wish they would do something like film 2 seasons a year, one celebrity, one non-celebrity. But I guess what we have to make do with is they film 2 seasons a year, one US and one UK,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but I do wonder if the number of people who knew each other in the first season kind of made them think, maybe we should go with with all normies, as they say, just, regular people as opposed to the people who know each other so that you don't have, oh, these four people were together on Dancing with the Stars
yeah,
and, etc.
yeah, sure. And I wonder as well if they maybe see the success of the UK version
Hmm.
as opposed to Traitors Australia season two, and they just sort of compared those directly and thought, well, the one with celebrities didn't work out, so let's
Yeah.
just follow the lead of the UK one. But then again, US has celebrities, and that's doing really well too. So, but
Yeah, but that's all celebrities. Again, I don't mean to insult New Zealand, but I don't know that they could field that many celebrities season after season. I don't think there's a Big Brother New Zealand or a Survivor. There was a couple of seasons of Survivor New Zealand. I'm, friends online with the winner of one of those seasons, but that hasn't been going on in quite some time. My point is they don't have as deep a pool of celebrities to pull from.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know
Uh,
if there's the Real Housewives of Auckland.
there may well be.
There
And do you
could
know
be.
what? If there is, I'm sure some of the fans will email me and complain about something
Yes,
horrible that I say.
yes, yes. Or me. I just said it. So, get that Bloomberg guy off. He doesn't know about this show in New Zealand.
Yeah. So you're right. A change of direction because it's a non-celebrity cast. One thing that is the same though is the host, Paul Henry,
Hmm.
and Paul explains the game again, in case we have forgotten or in case we're brand
Yes.
new to the show and we've never heard of it before. It's time to meet the players then. And it's funny when I'm watching this first episode, I'm really excited about it. I feel like it's been months since
Hmm.
I saw a new Traitors because, well, it has been months since I
It
saw a
has.
new
Yes.
Traitors, but it feels like even longer. So I was really excited. It looks. We'll probably reference this throughout the podcast, but It feels like there's a bigger budget. It feels like it's a
Yeah.
bit more cinematic, the dramatic
Hmm.
opening, lots of drone shots, the black cars are heading to the house. I think the first person we meet is Whitney, who is a funeral director. She thinks she's going to be a good listener. In the car with her are, no, I kept mixing up two of the players. It was either Molly or Bailey. I think it was Molly. Molly,
I
Stephen,
yes,
Mark.
I have some of the same problems, and I had to go back and forth, and I'm still not necessarily going to get everybody's name right after the first two episodes. So
Yeah.
we need to wait. They need to like say, okay, you two both have long blonde hair. You look too similar. We're getting rid of you. Just do it that way.
Yeah. What's really helped me out is the Traitors New Zealand Instagram page. They've got a post for each of the cast
Mm.
members with a pit. So I was sort of referring to that just to see people's names and what they did. By the end of episode two, I had a better understanding of who Molly actually was. Um, so Mark is in the same car, I think. He says he runs games for a job. And I
Hmm.
went to the Instagram page and it says that Mark is a professional game master who teaches strategy and tactics for social deduction games. Mark admits a weak spot when it comes to reading people. He might be king of the gaming table, but will the cards fall in his favor this time? And it turns out he's like a Dungeons and Dragons type of person, which one of the other players references about 20 times. Uh,
Yes, yes. Yeah, we'll get to that. I don't even want to go into that yet.
I'm sure she's one of your favorites.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. You must have read my mind.
we move to the next car, and I think it's Kat who asks the others if they're famous, which is funny because you just mentioned
Right,
that
right.
actually this time none of them are, and it made me laugh that even the contestants are explicitly addressing, "Hey, are we celebrities? Are any of you
Yeah.
famous?" Um, one of the players is called Brittany, and she is a content creator. And I looked her up on Instagram, and she has 40,000 followers. So maybe
Hmm.
does that count? Is she a celebrity? Does that count? I'm not
I
sure.
mean, again, not to insult New Zealand, but if you're in New Zealand and you have 40,000 New Zealand followers, probably. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how that compares elsewhere. But like on YouTube, I just passed over 30,000, but I'm in the US and I'm also like not selling anything. So
Uh, one of sorry, Cat.
yeah, the player.
She's just that's not my lie. She is wandering about, and I just thought she was going to push something over. Okay. Next, we meet one of my favorite contestants based on first impressions, and that is Joe. Joe is also a content creator in a very fabulous outfit. He says he's here because he's broke and struggling. And the best joke of the episode when he says, biologically, I'm 30, but I identify as 22.
Yes.
I want to steal that line and start using it. Although I'm not biologically 30, but I'll change the numbers. Um, he also says that he hopes everyone's going to play nice, and I think Joe, you're on the wrong show. They are not going to play
Yes.
nice.
Yes.
Next, we meet Jackie, the horoscope columnist and clairvoyant tarot reader. I'm a believer. I'm in. She's hooked me, and I know she has you too, David. Uh,
Oh yeah, I'll have thoughts about that later as she gets completely hoodwinked.
yeah.
Yeah.
She instantly tells Mike and Molly slash Bailey, whichever one it is, that she would totally betray them, which really made me laugh because it just is so at odds with this sort of typical image or persona of the tarot reader, the clairvoyant.
Yes.
But she actually is quite cutthroat about the game, which is really funny to me. There's a moment in the
And she's
cars.
also like 70 years old too. So she's the nice older woman, and she's like, I'm going to cut your throat.
Yes. There's a really funny moment because one of the contestants recognizes one of the other ones. Donna recognizes Jane, and in the car, she just goes, you look familiar to me. I think I know you. Like they live in the same town or something like that.
Yeah.
I think she says it's difficult to hear. I think she says from the council. Her Instagram bio thing says that she works in education. I thought she was a
Hmm.
teacher, but maybe she does something else in the council. But it just made me laugh that New Zealand's so small.
Yes.
These contestants are like, "Hey, I know you."
Well, and again, even that happened in I may have mentioned it before. I probably didn't because we didn't. I wasn't on with you when you did the one season and one episode
Yeah.
thing. But it happened on Survivor New Zealand. Where two players knew each other and they were friends, and they kept it hidden through most of the game, and then spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the season that's however many years ago, but uh one of them gets voted out and tells the rest of the jury we were working together because we knew each other, and the rest of the jury isn't real happy about that.
Ooh, yeah,
So yeah, it's yeah. it it happens. It has happened in U.S. Survivor as well. Where it's chance meetings where there were two players on the same season. I think it might have even been the same tribe who knew each other in college.
yeah,
But New Zealand seems to happen a little more frequently for some reason.
yeah. And now that we've covered Survivor UK on this podcast, I
Hmm.
understand these terms:
Right.
tribe, jury. I
Yes.
know what you're talking about now.
I know. That's why I didn't explain it. I was like, oh, good. I could just say these things.
Yeah. So at the house, the contestants all arrive. They're very excited about the grounds and the house and Paul. And Terry is anticipating a twist because well, this is something that maybe I'll come back to later. They, or I guess I could reference it now. There's this thing that I notice in this season already, which is we're dealing with a format now that isn't brand new anymore. So these
Hmm.
players, most of them by the sounds of it, they know the game and they've probably watched it. So they're approaching it differently. So they a few times in these opening two episodes, they reference elements of the game that make it clear they actually understand quite well how things might turn out or how things go. So the fact that some of them are already anticipating a twist as they arrive at the
Hmm.
house shows they know that this has happened in other seasons. Um,
Yeah,
there's
and
then
it's like the opposite of the Australia season two cast, who
you have no
we've
idea what's
heard
going
from
on.
players didn't even bother to read the notebook of rules and information, let alone watch any previous seasons. So they had no clue what was going on. A lot of this cast has clearly studied the game. They came in with strategies. Well, some different than each other, some the same. They know what's going on. They expect different things. And it's a breath of fresh air to me to have a cast that as a whole knows what's going on.
Yeah. And actually, before I watched the first episode, I got a message on Instagram from Mike, the contestant, to
Oh,
say hi and say, "Hey, I listened to your podcast before I went on the show." So yeah, they've been doing
nice.
their homework. Fingers crossed that Mike doesn't have the jinx of the Trader podcast and that he actually
Yeah.
does a little bit better, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I mean, he I think he's already done better than the one of the other people who we know who listened. So
Sure.
sorry.
Uh, now there's a spoiler here that well we I feel like we now can this isn't really a spoiler. Normally I don't want to say too much about previous seasons, but in this episode they spoil the outcome of season one of Traitors New Zealand straight away. So if they've talked about it in the episode, we're not
Hmm.
spoiling anything by now talking about it because the winner or one of the winners of season one of Traitors New Zealand appears as Sam. And because Paul says the drinks, Mr. Smith, and Sam appears.
Right.
He's been on this podcast. You've spoken to Sam.
Yes.
And yeah, they openly address that he is the winner from season one. So That's not a spoiler to anyone listening because if
I
you watched
mean,
the episode, you know that.
it shouldn't be a spoiler to ever mention previous winners, but I know some people disagree. But no, I'm sorry. If the season's already over and you're watching the next season, it's not a spoiler. That's why they had Sam on there because they know it's not a spoiler.
Yeah. And if you're listening to a podcast season about a second season of a show,
Right,
you could probably anticipate
right.
that maybe they'll talk about. No, I'm not from
Yeah.
personal experience or anything. I'm not complaining.
Ah,
Uh, so Sam brings out this tray of drinks, and two of the drinks are red. Whitney and
which
Molly end up being the ones that take them.
which by the way, really, you're giving the guy who's legally blind, making him walk down steps carrying a tray of wine glasses.
Yeah,
I was like, why are you doing this to poor Sam?
I didn't think about that actually, but yeah,
He even said at one point, one of them asked him a question like, why is this one different? He goes, I don't know, I'm blind, or words to that effect.
yeah,
I mean, he obviously can see, but from a legal standpoint, he's legally blind. And
yeah.
yeah, you could tell him he was focusing on, making it down the stairs. And of course, I probably would too. I'd be worried I'd fall down the stairs. And I have corrected 20/20 vision. So
And I've noticed that Sam's hair has also grown back from
yes, yes.
the haircut that he. Again, this is not a spoiler. If you've
Yeah,
seen season one, you'll know
right.
what I'm talking about. So yeah, Whitney and Molly end up with these red drinks. Mike offers to swap one of them, which Kat overhears and thinks maybe there's something a bit sus about him just for asking that question. Paul makes the two of them take a step forward and reveals that actually they have won 5k each. However, the twist is that they have a choice. They can either keep that 5k for themselves or return it to the prize pot. They both choose to return it.
Boo.
Well, yeah, I was gonna ask what you think. Mark says that this was a dumb move because he says, well, in his interview, statistically, it's pretty unlikely these two out of 22 players are
Hmm.
going to end up at the end. So if they had a chance to win some money, they should have taken it. David, was it the right decision to return the money?
Boo. I mean, look, I understand the idea of not wanting to make enemies right off the bat, but the traitors haven't even been chosen yet. So it's not like anyone can claim, aha, they did that because they're traitors, which wouldn't even make sense anyway, because this isn't the mole.
Hmm.
And Mark was right in what he said about, the odds are against you winning. So yes, it is still a strategic social game.
Yeah.
Yes, there could have been people who would be like, oh, you took that for yourself. Now I'm not going to work with you. But people, at least in theory, don't get voted out for reasons like that. They get voted out for being a traitor. In theory, we both know that's not always the case, and that's not even the right way to play the game. But all that said, yeah, they should have kept the money. It was dumb for them to put the money back because I really think they could have just said, sorry, we'll help you earn more, but this was a chance to, you know, make some money right off the bat. And, I mean, Paul even said, so charitable, but charity doesn't count for much here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm torn because yeah, I understand what Mark's saying. And again in the first season of Traitors New Zealand and the very first episode, a player is offered 10k to take and just leave the game, and
Mm-hmm.
someone does take it and leaves, and we
Yes.
never see them again. And I
Right.
always thought that was smart. I always think I would have done that. I think take it and go because you're probably not going to win money at the end of this. In this
Yeah.
case,
In,
it's a
in
little
that
bit different.
case, yeah, in that case, I would not have because with, and this is just pure personal thing. For the amount of money, when you translate New Zealand dollars to US dollars,
Yeah,
10,000 New Zealand dollars, at least at that point in time, was not, I mean, it was like, I think less, if I remember right, it was less than 5,000 US.
yeah,
And for me personally, being able to play out a whole season or however long would be worth taking that risk
Hmm.
and going for the bigger money. So in that situation, I would not have, just because of the relatively low dollar values.
Yeah.
If it had been higher, yes. Uh, and in this case, which I think you were just going to say, they don't even have to leave.
Yeah, yeah, it's take 5K and stay. But I think in the heat of the moment I would have done what Molly and Whitney did. I think paranoia would have got the better of me and I would be worried about the social element of the game, and I would be keeping in mind that to get ahead you probably have to be popular.
Hmm.
So I think my worry would have overtaken and I just would have said, no, I want everyone to think I'm a good guy.
And it
Even
was
though,
more difficult for who made the first decision. I think Molly went first and then Whitney.
yes. Yeah.
I think once Molly made the decision, Whitney was almost forced to. I
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
say that. It was definitely tougher for Whitney because then she'd be like, well, you're giving the prize to the prize pot, but I'm going to be the one who doesn't, you know?
Yeah, definitely. We move into the house then from this point. So the players start to explore. It's very it's definitely similar to, they've sort of styled it after, or
Yeah.
maybe not deliberately styled it, but it looks very much like the Scottish castle from the UK and US
Hmm.
versions. I mean, it's probably not quite as old, but yeah, they're sort of playing into this old world, antiques everywhere, sort of murder mystery. It was so different to the first season was sort of quite a modern
Hmm.
hotel. Paul then interviews the players to ask about whether or not they want to be traitors or faithful. So we see little clips of various people. I think most of them kind of want to be traitors. There's a few exceptions. Whitney says that she wants to win, and she says that that 5K was a speck of the potential prize. And she says this silly thing in her confessional, her interview. She says that the fact that I gave back that money absolutely proves my faithfulness. And I thought, you're all faithful at this point. It
Right,
doesn't
right,
prove anything.
exactly.
Um, Molly's interviewed. She says that she wants to be authentic and show people that she's a good person because then they won't realize when she stabs them in the back. Okay, sure.
Hmm.
And this is the only point where I realized that she is American, I think, or
Is
perhaps
she?
Canadian. Yeah,
Oh,
as is
I
one of
just
the other players.
I just it's funny when I watch international shows, I don't notice when someone doesn't have a different accent. The same thing happened to me. I was watching Australian Survivor, and then I met one of the Australian Survivor players, and she had an American accent. And I never noticed it on the show. And it just didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
So I honestly did not notice that anyone there has a non-New Zealand accent.
Yes, Molly and Noel, unless they have fake accents, they definitely have American or perhaps Canadian accents, and my British ear can't hear the difference, but they both Molly and Noel sound American to me.
Oh, that's funny. My first TikTok that I posted about the season was of Noel.
Oh,
And I didn't even notice it then, so I'll have to go back and
yes,
listen to it
yes.
again.
Uh, the next thing I noticed is that Mark has a notebook.
Yes.
I don't think this is a good look.
No.
There's nothing bad about taking notes, like I guess, and maybe in your room at night, and
Right.
sort of or keeping mental notes on people. But in this game, people, especially at the beginning, people are looking for any excuse to see you as an outsider or an easy
Hmm.
vote, and it does, it does come back to haunt him that he's very sort of overtly carrying around a notebook and writing things down.
Well, and the
Uh,
funniest part was his reasoning. He said he would use his notes to create organic conversations. which is like the opposite of how organic conversations work. It's like, okay, I know this fact, so therefore I will bring this up and they will be interested. That's not organic. That's constructed.
Yeah, really strange. And something else that he's sort of constructing is that, well, he has a cane that he uses sometimes, and Paul asks him, "Why have you got a cane?"
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Paul, or sorry, Mark says that he has chronic fatigue, but he's going to play it up for sympathy. And I also I'm not sure that's going to work out in his favor, but we'll
Well,
see.
I mean, yeah, it's if you're going to play it up for sympathy, you got to remember to use it.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, there's various points later on where
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious, maybe. Well, we'll
yeah,
see. We'll get there. We'll get
right,
there.
right.
Next in the interview is Jane, and this is when I realized that Jane is English for the first time. She says that she
Oh,
wants to be a traitor. She did you not notice that she was
I
English?
did not notice that either.
She- She's, I'm not imagining it. She's definitely English. She used to be a police officer. In fact, she was a police officer for 25 years. Jason says that he's talking to someone about, I think Jane asks him, "Oh, what do you think? Do you want to be a traitor?" And he says he hasn't really thought about being a traitor. And I
Yes,
either don't believe him or he's really doesn't know what he's doing here. I can't quite believe that someone hasn't thought about being a traitor until this very moment. So it was a bit
right.
strange.
Yeah.
We get other brief interview
Well, one of
clips
them even
from
said, well, that's kind of the name of the game.
yeah, exactly. Uh, we hear from Joe, Andrew, Whitney, Brittany, most of them again
Yeah.
seem to want to be a traitor, with a few exceptions.
Hmm.
It's time for the choosing ceremony then. We know that there's already $10,000 in the prize pot. The banishment room as well now is so much better than in season one. Season one was very much they were in some room somewhere with black drapes just covering the walls. It's very sort of very low key, very budget. But they've upped the ante now. It just looks so much better. Paul talks to them all. He asks them to look around and asks, do they already have reads on anyone yet? Of course, it's complete mind games. It's complete nonsense. Nothing has
Right.
actually happened yet. The game has not begun. So
Hmm.
nothing they've noticed about anyone means anything. However, you know, people will make up whatever they want to make up.
Right.
They put their masks on, and while Paul is sort of going around and choosing, we get more clips of interviews. Mike says this thing in his interview with Paul. He says, "An informed minority will always outsmart an uninformed majority." He says that's sort of what he believes about being
Hmm.
that's why he wants to be a traitor. So again, Mike has obviously been doing his homework. I've heard this line before. It's sort of one of the political premises that I think the game Werewolf is based on.
Okay.
I watched like a YouTube video all about how werewolf I think it was werewolf was invented, and that's where I heard this sort of phrase the first
Okay.
time. So it rung a bell when Mike mentioned it. It's very tense around the table. Lots of them want to be chosen. And it turns out that Jane is the first traitor chosen from a tap on the shoulder from Paul. Then it's Whitney. She's very excited about it. In fact, she's
Yeah.
sort of smiling and like almost saying something, and I want her
Yes.
to be quiet. And Mike is third, and no more after that. I wondered if Paul might pick another, but there are only three for now. Um, it's really difficult to say because we barely know the contestants at this point.
Right.
David, what were your first impressions of the choices of traitors?
I think they're good. Yeah, like you said, we barely know them. Obviously, the clips that we were shown were meant to prepare us for these three being picked.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think they're good. Um, I do think that, and I'm sure you're going to get to this in a moment here. I think that Mike needs to start wearing a hat to cover up that vein that's pulsating in his head.
Yeah, yeah. Poor Mike. Jackie is annoyed that she didn't get picked.
Hmm.
And she already, as soon as they take off the masks, she wants Mark out because she doesn't like him carrying his notebook around and making notes on everyone. And yes, Jason has clocked Mike's pulsing nerve and
Well,
thinks,
yeah, he called it a nerve. It's not a nerve. Nerves don't
yeah,
pulsate.
it's like it's a vein,
It's
right?
a vein, and we see. Saw it big as life in multiple scenes, and in poker you can see that sometimes where but in poker it's like, okay, is it pulsating because they're running a big bluff or because they have a big hand?
Yeah,
And you need to watch someone play for a while. In this, it's kind of like, hmm, I mean, I guess it could be pulsating because he's just excited to be there, but it's more likely that there's a reason for it. And there's not a whole lot you could do when your body betrays you like that.
yeah, yeah. Which is Terry also spots Jane
Mm-hmm.
taking big gulps of water, and I guess that's a sort of
No, she
physical
never took any
reaction.
water.
Well,
Never,
oh, yeah,
never, never.
we we'll get there. Yes, very
Yes.
interesting. Um, it's quite interesting that immediately two of the traitors have eyes on them. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, what I realize is this: there could have been 20 different
Right.
accusations around the table,
Yes.
but the editors pick the ones that they want us to see. So maybe
Right.
it
A
doesn't
hundred
really mean
percent.
anything.
Yeah.
Beyond the banishment room, then, we see some discussions around the house. Molly, Ben, and Brianna are discussing Mike. They think he's very quiet, very reserved. And one of them mentions, yeah, I was in the car with him and he was very quiet. And I think, well, okay, but that was before you all arrived, so
Right.
so what? What does that mean then? Jane appears at this point and they call her the mum of the group.
Yes.
And this is good for her because she wants to play the social game and she
Mm-hmm.
likes it that if people want to think of her as the mum, that's not a bad thing. Whitney is planting some rumors already about Mark in his notebook, and Jackie is stoking that too. Uh,
Yes.
in the house,
Which,
there's
by
a
the way, I just want to jump in here, as you
yeah, yeah.
probably expected I could. Great clairvoyance there, Jackie. You're being used by a traitor to go after a faithful. She is 6 inches away from you, and you can't read her. Great job.
Or Jackie's bluffing and she does know, and it's all a big
Not
facade.
yet. Later, I mean, later that can happen, but not yet.
Yeah, yeah. It's time for our first challenge then, and it's a creepy doll, scary, haunted challenge. There's a Paul has this doll with its limbs strewn around the house, and they have to split up into 5 teams, follow clues, find the doll parts. If they find the doll part, they will win 2 silver bars, and the silver bars are worth $500 each. They the doll parts are scattered around like the church, the cemetery, a fireplace. The players obviously they must have had time to kind of explore and get to know the
Right.
grounds because they seem to know what the clues lead to fairly
Yeah.
quickly. I noticed that Mark is running around without his cane at this moment.
Yeah, and that's the worst part is in the challenge where they have to move over rough terrain, he should need it the most. And it's like that's the inconsistent part. Like, how are people going to believe that you need it to just walk around the house when you can run around outside without it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely caught my attention.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the others will notice it. We'll talk about it.
Yes.
As well as the doll pieces, each limb has a puzzle piece with it too that they have to pick up. All of the teams find the pieces, they bank their $5,000. Lucy then also has a missing eye, and Paul says that he will double the prize if they can find the eye. Everyone looks at this map that they've created out of these sort of 5 missing pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but Mark, for some reason, disappears to go and check the pool balls, and I'm still none the wiser about why he does
Yeah.
that. At this moment, I wrote down in my notes, surely this man is getting banished, uh,
Yeah.
because it's just sort of so, um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Strange.
Uh,
Yeah.
Strange and what's the word? It's
Since,
Conspicuous. Thank you.
yes,
Conspicuous.
since this is an audio podcast, I do have feel like I need to explain. Matthew was just waving his hands around in the air there, like, and that
I knew
really describes what Mark was doing.
I knew that there was a word that
Yes,
had it was a word with an opposite that people used a lot as well.
yes,
Inconspicuous. It was like
right.
it's got an opposite. What's the other word? Okay, conspicuous. It was very conspicuous of him. So the others, they realize that the map is pointing to the nursery. Again, they seem to just know the rooms in the house and the layout of the house. Paul confirms
Mhm.
they're correct. And off some of them rush. Janae, Andrew, and Molly head upstairs. And of course, they find the missing eye just in the nick of time. Hooray.
Of course.
It's time for some more chatter around the house, some more discussions, theorizing. Yes, this is when I noticed that Noel is also American, and he is 22, very young. He talks a bit about body language. He says actually he thinks you can't really pick up that much from people's body language, and it's annoying him that everybody's trying to do this. Terry is still very
Yes,
suspicious
and
of
that's
Jane.
yeah, that's where I got my first clip for TikTok, YouTube, and
Uh,
Instagram because I agree with him. And in fact, we've heard that from other players who have heard us say body
yeah,
language is meaningless. Now, I won't say it's 100% meaningless because, yeah, sometimes people do change their body language a little bit, but not in the way that like Noel was describing and that so many other people do. Like, oh, they're blinking more, or they hesitated a moment, or whatever. You breathed weird. So yeah, it's he's 100% correct on that one.
yeah, I thought so. We see an interesting interaction between Mike and Bailey, and I say interesting interaction because Bailey's doing a lot of talking and Mike isn't really saying very much. They've definitely included this awkward moment to give us the impression that Mike is, he's quiet and he's not really making lots of conversation, and then that's
Mm,
probably going to draw people's attention towards him, which it does. Whitney is still on the Mark bandwagon along with
hmm
Jackie, and she's telling Andrew about it. She's implying that Mark is not a team player. She can sort of just tell that already. Andrew, though, isn't really buying it. He says he doesn't think this is true, and he says this. I'm conflicted by Andrew. So Andrew says, I don't really want to go along with the group. I don't believe what they're saying is true. But as we've talked about so many times on this podcast, you kind of do have to go along with the group. Maybe not
right.
in your mind, but for the sake of appearances, you're
hmm
probably going to have to just vote along with the way that everybody else is voting. And when it comes to episode two, we'll probably talk about what Andrew ends up doing. He is also realizing that because Jackie and Whitney are going on about Mark so much, they might well be traitors. And he's half right. Yeah, I mean, he ends up being 100% right, but
He
at this
he
moment in
he's
time, he's half
he's
right.
more clairvoyant than Jackie is. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and of course, what I realize at this point is the traitors themselves don't know who one another are. They don't know who their
Right.
colleagues are yet.
Right.
So for all Whitney knows, she may be sitting with a traitor.
Right. But the other thing is, Andrew, yeah, so he gets suspicious. Sorry, I was going to jump ahead. I just realized he doesn't say what I thought he said yet. I'm being clairvoyant about what Andrew will say.
Yeah. It's time for Traitor's Tower then, although it's not really called Traitor's Tower. Jane and
Yeah,
what
I suspect it's not a tower. It looks just like a broom closet, kind
is
of.
yeah. I can't help but call it Traitor's Tower. So the three traitors arrive, they reveal themselves, and Jane and Whitney both tell Mike, "Oh, we thought you were a traitor. We called it." So this isn't
Yeah.
good for him. They
No.
they do seem surprised at one another, no. So good for them, bad news for
hmm
Mike. But Whitney says that she wants to protect him at this point. And it's time for them. Well, it seems like it's time for them to discuss their first murder. However, before they can really say anything, Paul appears. And I kind of guess what's going to happen because we've seen this in the most recent UK and US seasons. Paul tells them that actually there is going to be a fourth traitor and they are going to choose who they want to join them. Uh, Whitney immediately suggests that they bring in a traitor as bait to then immediately get rid of. So I thought at this point, oh, surely they'll pick Mark.
Right.
I thought that would be the obvious choice, but well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was like, I mean, Whitney had been putting his name out there, and we saw others putting his name out there too. And then yeah, they go with Jackie instead, which seemed odd since Jackie was on Whitney's side.
yeah,
And and the reasoning seemed to be Whitney said something like, when they get her out, she could be like, oh my gosh, that is so surprising. But it's, if you've watched the show before, especially the US version, people are more likely to say, huh, it's weird that that person was a traitor and you were working so closely with them.
yeah. I can't quite figure out whether or not it's a good idea. You're right. Whitney says, yes, Jackie's a good idea because I get on well with her and people see our friendship. Therefore, yeah, if she
Yeah,
turns out to be banished and she's a traitor, I can act like I'm really yeah, it would be better if they murdered Jackie and then she could say, "Oh, people will be
right.
surprised that she was murdered because they wouldn't expect me to do that as a friend." So yeah, something's not
Yeah,
quite
it
adding up
did.
there.
The logic was either missing or left out. I'm not
Yeah,
sure which it is.
yeah. They do also briefly suggest Joe because as a traitor because he's popular and it would be good to have him inside. But hey, they decide to go ahead with Jackie and she has her letter delivered to her. And I was very surprised that they picked her. We're reminded that they
And
say
so was she, because she didn't see it coming.
yeah, you're right. And we're reminded with a little interview flashback with Paul that she really wanted to be a traitor in the first
Hmm.
place. So she arrives at what is actually called the conclave, because
Mm.
there was a shot of her, there was a close up of her letter, and that's the term that it had on it. Meet the traitors at the conclave. So we're getting towards the end of the episode. The pace is really moving along pretty quickly, I thought.
Hmm.
Um, Jackie's immediate impression is that she doesn't trust Jane at all. She says this in an interview. Whitney is fully ready to betray her friend Jackie already, and they are ready to choose a murder victim. And that is essentially where episode one ends.
Yep. Yeah. And so we get the cliffhanger there, which I should note, my understanding is that the way this is being released is that both episodes each week are released on streaming at like noon or something like that
Mhm.
on the Monday, but then they air on TV Monday night and Tuesday night,
Yeah.
which is strange, but also there was something like that, UK TV did something like that for, was it
Survivor.
Survivor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Exact same. Yeah.
So yeah, it's odd, and but you can, skip the cliffhanger if you want to, and you're streaming instead of just watching.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, episode 2 picks up with the four traitors in Tower/Conclave, deciding who to murder. They discuss Brittany, Noel, and Janae, and I barely remember Janae. Uh, and um, and then we head to breakfast, where, as usual for this show, it's a cold breakfast, even though some of them are like, "Oh, this looks wonderful," and we don't have anyone fighting over hard-boiled eggs
Yeah.
like on the U.S. version.
By
Uh,
the way, before we talk about
oh
breakfast as
yes, sorry.
well, I just wanted to ask. Well, I think I know what you think.
Okay.
I wonder if Jackie has any idea why they really recruited her. Like, I wonder if it crosses her mind that, oh, they're just going to get me out the first chance they can.
Nah, the stars didn't tell her that.
No, no, the stars didn't tell her. Uh, Intuition didn't tell her. Logic didn't tell her. Yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't. It doesn't seem to be. I mean, maybe it does, and they don't show us. But
which maybe if we give Whitney more credit that some of the discussion was left out of the edit, maybe that's what she was trying to say, was that Jackie will trust her because they're already friends.
hmm, yeah,
And Jackie won't expect that she's being put up there as a sacrifice.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So, anyway, so the first group comes in. None of the traitors are in the first group, which kind of surprised me. But then Whitney and Jackie are part of the second group. Whitney is a little too excited committing the first murder in a confessional. She kind of worries me when it comes to committing murders. Jane is in the third group, and they save Mike for the final group, and they come in without Janae, the MMA fighter. So as Paul says, Janae is gone and forgotten, and I mean they bear like I said that I don't remember two scenes that she was in, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate.
I kind of I remembered who she was because her job was so unusual, so
Mhm.
it caught my attention. I I don't I was surprised at the decision to get rid of her, and I don't think it was a good decision. So their reasoning seemed to be that she was like really smart, and they thought, oh, she'll catch on to us. She's going to be a good
Mhm.
player. But I don't know. I think you ought to just get rid of quiet people. I think with people like Ginny, if someone's quite headstrong or quite vocal,
Mhm.
that can just often get people in trouble. So I reckon keep those people around. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Utah said when they were reacting, said that Janae was talking a lot of strategy right away on the first day.
Yeah,
So that may have been it. She may have mentioned a name. She may have just come out as being too strategic. I don't know. Um, yeah, we don't really get a whole lot of good reasons. And it's the first day. There may not be a whole lot of good reasons. Someone
yeah.
stands out and everybody goes, okay. So, um, after breakfast, Andrew tells us that Jackie told him that she said to someone else that if he got murdered, she would leave too. And now we saw her say that to the person next to her at breakfast. But he doesn't know that and jumps to the conclusion that the only place she would have said that would have been in the conclave when they were deciding who to get rid of. So he reaches the correct conclusion that she is a traitor for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Which is kind of appropriate when it comes to a so-called clairvoyant. But he decides this means that she's his guardian angel. And again, he's right for the wrong reason. And, so he's going to stay close to her, which is a tried and true strategy. It's a smart strategy. He just doesn't know that his guardian angel is actually guardian bait.
Yeah. So yeah, that I'm gonna the guardian angel comment was really interesting. So if I'm understanding correctly, and I thought the same as you, I didn't really understand why he came to the conclusion that Jackie must have spoken about this at Traitor's
Mm-hmm.
Tower. But when he says that she's his guardian angel, what he means is, oh, I think she's a traitor now, so I'm going to keep her close to me,
Right.
and she
He's a
likes
tra-
me.
right. She's a traitor who likes me, so therefore I will stay close to her,
Yeah,
which
I
is something we saw a lot of in Canadian traders and in the most recent US traders.
yes, I will come back to that comment later because yeah, something that Andrew then does further on in the episode is a bit at odds with this strategy to me, but we'll get
Okay.
there.
Okay. So Jackie tells us her plan for today is to talk to people. That's a pretty good plan. Um, and she does, once again pushing Mark as a traitor because he's a Dungeons and Dragons guy, which makes him strategic. Now, as a Dungeons and Dragons guy myself, who has played since junior high, and I still play at least once a month, I agree. Yes, we can be very strategic, but not all of us. I have played with people who they just enjoy playing. It doesn't make them strategic. It's just a fun role playing game,
Yeah.
Now, he is his job is game master, dungeon master, whatever. So I guess a bit more strategic, perhaps I could see that, but it's a different type of strategy. But it also brings us back to something we've discussed before about people, like saying, oh, they're an actor. That means they could be pretending to be faithful. Okay, whatever your job is in real life, it doesn't mean that you're a traitor. It may mean you're capable of being a traitor. That, yes, an actor can act in the game. A dungeon master or strategic person can be strategic in the game, but it doesn't make them a traitor. Now, of course, in this case, Jackie's now doing it for a reason. She wasn't originally, but she's continuing with it to try and throw suspicion onto a particular person. So, it's sort of criticizing the whole thought process of everyone when it comes down to that. Because, like I said, all the strategy, all the strategic ability in the world doesn't mean they were picked as a traitor.
Yeah, exactly.
But then Jackie weirdly continues that she believes Mark will assign character types to them. And, because he's not only the dungeon master, but she used to play too. So I guess well, I mean, a few things here. He's going to assign character types. So I guess she's like the sorcerer, and then he's going to assign like the fighter and the cleric and the the monk. And I mean, I don't understand what she's going to do. He's going to run out of classes before he gets to all 20 other people anyway. But I don't understand what that has to do with anything. Like he's gonna assign classes to you. Okay, and but also when she talks about, well, I was a dungeon master too. I used to play too. Well, then doesn't that make you as dangerous as he supposedly is?
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole thing isn't logically sound
Yeah,
at all.
it's silly and it's just too much. She
Right.
just keeps talking about it, and I
Yes.
think maybe it's Kat, one of the other
Yes,
players,
Kat.
even notices and is just like, please get away from me.
Yes, she said she finds Jackie highly irritating, which means I immediately like Kat a lot. And then Kat adds, I also think that she thinks she's never wrong, and that is real annoying. And so more bonus points for Kat. Now elsewhere, Brianna is talking about how she originally suspected Mike, but doesn't anymore. Mike wanders over to her, and I realize he was part of the group listening to Jackie go on about Mark, so he passes along that suspicion. Brianna notes that she just doesn't like Mark, as we cut back to Jackie again talking about him to a different group, this time mentioning his notebook, which I have to admit, as we discussed, yes, she's right about that part.
Yeah.
Molly, I think, because I suffer from the same problem that you do in telling her from one of the others, doesn't think they'd make Mark a traitor because it's so obvious. However, Mike tells us, I think Jackie has an inability to keep her mouth shut. Which, yeah, that sounds right to me. He thinks she's going to get herself banished because she can't stay in the background, which also sounds right. So, right now it sounds like the whole bait plan is going along swimmingly.
Yeah.
Then, out of nowhere, a bird flies into the mansion and poops on the pool table, which people say is bad luck. And I say, yeah, it's bad luck mainly for the person who has to clean the pool table.
Yeah.
That's it. That had nothing to do with anything else except a bird flew in and they decided to show us. I'm like, okay, that was a strange thing to show us, but they probably thought it was a strange thing to happen. So they put it in there.
Someone did make a joke about it being the spirit of Janae, which made me laugh.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was Whitney, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah. All right, it's time for the mission. During the drive there, Terry pushes the idea that Jane is a traitor, while in the other cars, people talk about how Terry has pushed the idea that Jane is the traitor, but they disagree. They all arrive at a field with mud, barbed wire, and landmines. They will be given 45 seconds in teams of two to go through the mud and barbed wire maze and find a landmine that has a statement on it about various players or Paul or other related facts that they believe to be true. For each one they get right, they get $1,000. If not, they get a little explosion in their face. And there are also shields in play. Now, we saw something similar to this. I cannot tell you what season it was. We've watched so many seasons at this point.
It was Australia season 2.
Okay. Okay. So they do it in two groups. The first 5 teams begin. Utah and Terry go for the shield as we get a confessional from Mark saying people shouldn't do that. And here Jackie talked about what a strategic mastermind Mark is. I'll have more on this as we get through it, but I'll just say it now. That's exactly the wrong answer. But other people get upset about it as well. This is mind-boggling. The people are like, oh, they shouldn't go for a shield. This is traitor behavior to go for a shield. What? Where did any of you get that from? I'm sorry, that's just dumb.
Yeah, it's it's silly. I mean, yes, a traitor might go for a shield to make themselves look like a faithful and to give themselves free reign of murdering whoever they want, but that's not the most obvious reason why someone goes for a shield. Like,
Right.
the simple obvious reason is I'm a faithful and I don't want to be murdered tonight. So it's, you know, people might just be doing it for the obvious reason. It doesn't mean they're a traitor. So they're jumping to like the secondary possible reason for someone getting a shield, not just the obvious reason why someone might want it.
Right. And the thing is, like, okay, I can understand as the numbers get down. All right, well, we want to murder this particular person, so we have to make sure they don't get the shield. There's 21 people in there.
Yeah,
They can find someone to murder.
Anyone.
Yeah. And it makes much more sense for one of those 17 people who aren't traitors to want the shield, so they're not randomly murdered like Janae was.
Yeah, and I mean the shields they are there for a reason, and they are there to be used by the faithful. So
Right.
it doesn't make you a dishonest or bad player for wanting to make use of it.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to it. It reminds me of some of these seasons, like we saw a lot of it in Survivor UK of, are you there for the right reasons? Are you there for the group? Are you da da da?
Yeah.
No, you're there for yourself. Stop it with the group stuff. So anyway, I won't go through all the questions, but there is one in the second round that isn't picked that says 2 players in this game are related.
Mm.
I would have picked that one because whether it's right or wrong, it gives you information.
Yeah, that's true.
Which could be more valuable than the $1,000 in the pot. But again, nobody went for that. Another question, which turned out to be true, is that one person is hiding their first name.
Yeah.
I have no idea why, and they don't explain it. That like they don't have. I expected a confessional with someone like Jane saying, "Well, my real first name is I don't know, Mickey, but I didn't want people to know it was Mickey, so I'm going with Jane."
Yeah. I wrote this down to this. It's the one question I wrote down. I just thought, who is hiding their first name? I want, is it Utah? Because it's quite an unusual name for someone who's not American, but
right. Well, even for someone, I don't believe I've ever met anyone with the name of Utah. I mean, the first thing I thought of was, is he Mormon? And this is some sort of like, in honor of Utah, because I don't know.
I'm hoping as the season goes on, we'll find out the answer.
Yeah, I when I looked up the names, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me, like, Johnny quote Utah, or something like that. Who knows? So Ciale, I think I pronounced that right, and Whitney go for the shield. He says he did it because he wanted to be protected, but also to see her reaction. And she did want it, so that tells him something. Again, I'm not sure what it tells him other than she wanted protection just like he did.
Yeah, it's
Like,
you can't really draw a conclusion from
no,
that.
yeah, it would not without reflecting it upon yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So only one team got their question wrong out of both of the groups. So they earn $7,000 and shields for four people. Which,
Yeah. And it's a bit of
yeah,
a shame that we only get one explosion, so it's
yeah,
it's just a sort of televisually a bit anticlimactic. Like, oh,
right,
we only got one. That
yeah,
I wanted to, it's I mean it's silly and it doesn't matter, but it's a shame we didn't get more explosions.
yeah. I expected more. I mean, they showed that's one from like four different angles and in slow mo, so they
Yeah.
they did get the most out of it that they could. But so now the prize pool is a total of $27,000, which, considering that that's more than a quarter of the total possible. And at first I was thinking, oh, they're going to have to slow things down. But then I remember, no, this is the end of week one, and there's only 4 weeks to this show.
Yeah.
So that's about right, I guess.
Mhm.
Uh, the players gather together at the mansion for discussions after the mission. Terry continues pushing his Jane theory because she was drinking water right after the traitors were picked, and also because she was playing pool, which he says showed she was trying to distract herself from the stress of being a traitor. Uh, yeah, let's go back to what Noel said about some of these are silly reasons.
Although he is right, she is a traitor.
He is, but I think it goes back to what you said. I think they got clips of everybody saying something about everybody, and again, getting to the right conclusion for the wrong reason. At least the pool thing, I think, is the wrong reason. The
Yeah.
gulps of water, okay, maybe that was correct, because even at the time she was like, oh, it's hot in here, isn't it? So was that nervousness? I'd like to think, as a former undercover cop, that she could handle being named the traitor without being that obvious, but maybe she's out of practice, or maybe it really was hot in there so that they could, push that idea. Ben tells us that he and Andrew are being convinced about Jane being a traitor, but Ben also tells us his game plan is to keep a traitor close. So he goes to Jane and tells her. A few other women seem to be on her side, and they all agree to vote the same way. So this is the second person we know of that is like, okay, I want to keep a traitor close. So these are the people we were talking about earlier. They've watched the show. They understand the strategy.
Yeah. And although that is, I just sort of had a thought to myself at this point that although that probably generally is a good idea to befriend someone that you really feel is a
Mm-hmm.
traitor, there's also you're also still running a bit of a risk because if your traitor's very clever, they might murder you to clear themselves of suspicion. So,
Right.
that you're not necessarily safe just because you're
You're
friends with
not.
them, is what I'm saying.
I think the odds are in your favor. I mean, we've said this before. The goal of the game is not to kill off all the traitors. The goal of the game is to make it to the end and know who the remaining traitors are.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you can get close to one and keep them close, I mean, Sandra outlined the strategy very well in US season 2. That this is the goal. It doesn't always work, but it's the goal. Um, so with that, they head to the first round table. And Jane, newly possessing this information, decides to begin the discussion by going straight at Terry's accusations. She also says going for a shield is traitorous behavior, which we discussed it isn't, but I will give her a pass because she's not dealing in normal logic. She's trying to turn the tables on him or turn the round table on him. Terry notes how she swallowed multiple times after the masks came off at the traitor designation, then drank a lot of water. Well, while Jane insists she didn't drink any at all, which we know isn't true, but they don't have replay capabilities. So
They don't, but we do. So
right, right.
I actively went back to episode 1
Mhm.
just to double check, and she does take a drink of water
Yeah,
at the table.
yeah.
The only what I now she's either just flat out lying because
Hmm.
she knows that maybe nobody can prove her wrong. Or I think there's maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding. I think I think she thinks he was saying you took a big drink of water as soon as you took off your blindfold, when actually she waits and they take off their blindfold and Paul speaks to them and then Paul leaves the room and then when they're all just chatting, she takes a
Ah,
bit. So I think maybe in her mind she's saying, I didn't do that straight away. I waited
hmm
10 minutes. But
yeah.
but Terry doesn't actually mean that. So I wondered if maybe that's how she was able to sort of deny it so strongly.
Yeah, possibly. Um, so Jane next points out that Janae was a strong woman, and so is she. So is Terry a traitor? And the traitor's plan is to take out all the strong women?
I mean, she's she's got to come up with something. So,
Right, right.
oh, by the way, I
Uh,
can't believe I didn't say this as well. I wondered if this drinking the water was going to be what. Sometimes there's these events in the Traitors that linger and that people just
oh,
keep coming
yeah.
back to for episodes and episodes. And I thought, is this going to be something that the players keep returning to even in 3 episodes from now? And if so, can we call it Watergate all over again?
Oh, I was gonna say no, no. Of course, they're not gonna bring it back. Da da da. But just for that, I'll yes. Okay, good, good, nice.
Just had to say that.
Yes. Ah. Um. All right. Well, Brianna tries to come to Jane's defense by saying Terry was also targeting Haley, but Terry denies it. And Brianna tells us she has terrible short term memory, so she doesn't know if it was true or she dreamed it, which seems likely to be a problem in this game. I really what? I just
It's
I
so
don't know.
weird.
Yeah. Especially since, not to jump ahead, but in the previews, she gets mad at someone isn't insisting they did something, next episode. And it's like, well, do they, or is she imagining it again? We don't know.
Yeah. My notes here just say Brianna WTF.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Mark says he was talking to Jane and mentioned how it would be hard to sleep last night because there could be a knock at the door, and says she acted like she hadn't even thought of that possibility. And then Jackie tells us she has to jump in and protect Jane. So she goes after Mark for being dun 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 a dungeon master.
Here we go.
Everybody drink. Yes, drink. Yes. And yes, Matthew is drinking as I say that. Um and she isn't saying he's a traitor right now, although she was before, but he is a strategist and she knows that. And Mark has this huge smile on his face, which people call out. But he says it's because he's enjoying the game and this could be his last time in the room and he's just having a blast. Uh, then it's pointed out that Janae had spoken about having three suspects, and he was one of them. But they don't go further than that as the time for talk is over. So we get to the vote. Mike votes Bree because she put things in Terry's mouth. Donna votes Mark. Steven votes Terry. Brittany votes Mark. Utah votes Mark. Winnemue votes Mark. Jason votes Mark. Noel votes Mark. Andrew votes Jane. Whitney votes Mark. At this point, I'm like, okay, Mark's dead. Mark's dead meat.
Yeah.
There's no way
Yeah.
he's not going to get another vote. But well, actually, yeah, right. No more votes. Then we go. Jackie votes Terry. Bailey votes Terry. Terry votes Jane. Bree votes Terry. Bing. I think it was Bing. I didn't actually double check it. That's what I wrote down. That's what it sounded like. I meant to double check that name. I don't remember there being a Bing, but there were a few other people in there. So
I don't have the list of names in front of me, but
okay, well,
I'll trust
yeah,
that.
it's not my lie. Whatever. I promise that. Molly votes Terry. Ciali votes Terry. Mark votes Jane because she came out of the gate throwing Terry's name out. Jane votes Terry and then explains why she did that. Kat votes Terry. Joe votes Terry. And Mark smiled through the whole thing. He's just so happy to be there. He's just excited. And so it's Terry. And I wonder, did production have a good idea who was going to vote how and sit them around the table in that way for that reason, so that they could make it look like it was going to be Mark and then have everybody go for Terry? Because those people did all agree they were going to vote as a block beforehand.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't think about that.
mhm.
I wonder if they were sitting in the same positions as when Paul chose the traitors. I can't I can't
I don't
remember off the
remember.
top of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thought didn't cross my
Yeah.
mind.
So Terry stands up. There isn't a specific circle of truth. The room is too small for it, apparently. Doesn't have a nice archway. So he just stands up next to Paul and tells them he was a faithful. And so, oh, darn it, shucks, there he goes. Um, so then they all wander back into the other areas of the mansion for post roundtable discussions. Andrew tells Jane she did a much better job of explaining herself, and Terry killed himself with words. So there's, Andrew also sucking up to Jane there.
Mm.
He was sucking up to Jackie earlier, and now he's sucking up to Jane too.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wondered if Andrew had made a mistake by voting for Jane. This is sort of something I said I would come back to. You know, earlier
mhm,
when he talked about Jackie being his guardian angel because he thought she was a
right.
traitor. So he's figured out if you know who a traitor is, it's a good idea to keep them close. But he doesn't then apply that logic to Jane. Like he votes for her
Oh
because he
yeah.
genuinely feels that she's a traitor. And I just wondered if that was a mistake. I thought if he really does think Jane is a traitor, I, was it wise to write her name down? Why not just? And he said earlier he wasn't going to do this, but I think it's a bad idea. Just go with the group. Just go with where you think the votes are
Yeah.
going to go. So uh, maybe it was difficult to tell, but it would have been good if he had kind of sussed that not that many people were actually going to vote for Jane in the end, so he shouldn't
Right.
either. There was something else I noticed just that was interesting in terms of votes. I know I'm going back a bit. It just I was quite surprised and impressed that Mike totally escaped votes. At the start
Yeah.
of the episode, or maybe the end of episode one, there was a lot of suspicion on him, because of the vein or the nerve and the fact
hmm
that he was very quiet and reserved. But by the time it got to the banishment room, yeah, Mike had sort of
I mean,
they'd moved on.
right. Well, Terry changed his focus mostly to Jane. I think he was one of the people who brought up the pulsating.
Yeah,
And the women specifically had said, well, we thought it was you, but now we don't.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, he managed to, I don't know whether he did something or whether other people did something to just not make himself suspicious anymore.
yeah.
Um, so uh Mark tells the others that he has no poker face and can't contain his glee at being there and having people talking about him. I mean, to my mind, it's like the guy's just having fun. Leave him alone. You know, he's so excited to be there. It was like his dream come true. The absolute best game, and he's having a blast, and he's just enjoying it. That doesn't make him a traitor. He's just having fun. Leave the guy alone.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed.
So the faithful go off to bed, and the traitors gather in the fake tower. Uh, they don't seem worried about Mark, which makes sense. Yet for some reason, his name stays among the possibilities, which does not make sense.
Yeah,
I don't understand. They're like, well, he already had the second most votes, so they're okay. Why are you considering him still?
yeah.
Um, Mike thinks Winnemue is dangerous. And they also talk about Brittany being involved in several groups and playing well. But we won't find out who is murdered until next week. So I'll just say I will be very surprised if it's Mark, and that would be a huge mistake, I think. I
Yeah.
do think Mark in the future will escape the votes. I don't think he will be the type of person who is frequently targeted anymore. I think this was the most votes he will ever get, at least for a long time. I think people will get to know him better, understand he's just having fun, and it'll shuffle off elsewhere. We've seen that in other seasons. But still, you don't knock out the person who got the second most votes right away.
Yeah. I mean, unless they sometimes we see traitors go for this tactic where where they just want to confuse everybody. So
Right.
so maybe they murder him because no one will be able to understand it or make any sense of it, and so they just want to cause chaos.
Hmm.
But yeah, it would feel a bit pointless to me. Like
Right.
he's in the running for banishment next time or sometime soon. So
Right.
just leave him where he is.
Yeah.
I between the other two they discussed, I think it was two. I would guess they might murder Brittany. That is really based on not very much. I'm just
Yeah,
picking a name.
I'm thinking Winnemue just because Mike talked about him being dangerous.
Okay.
But yeah, it could be either way. We were not given much in the way of hints.
Yeah. I don't know them well enough. I don't
Right.
know how they interact with everybody. I'm not I don't have much of an educated guess here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, overall, I'm sure you've got some sort of
Hmm.
final thoughts. My impression was I really, really enjoyed these two episodes. I was looking forward to it anyway, but sometimes I'm probably a bit unconsciously biased against, we're not biased, but I love the UK version so much that
Hmm.
maybe in my mind I think other international seasons won't quite live up to it, apart from Australia, which I always love. So I I was so much more impressed than I thought I would be. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was better than the first. I know it's only been two episodes, but I
Right.
enjoyed it more than I remember enjoying New Zealand season one. So yeah, I had a great time. I think it's a good cast. I already know a lot of I mean, fair enough.
Hmm.
I'm taking notes for a podcast, but I know a lot of the characters already. I know names now. Yeah, I think it's a varied cast. I like that it's non-celebrity.
Yeah.
So I'm still confused about how, unless we're wrong, that there are only 8 episodes. I don't quite understand how they're going to whittle down all these people in that short a space, but
Yeah. I mean, they got rid of, so they're down three by the beginning of next episode.
yeah.
So but that's 19 to get rid of and get down in 6 episodes.
Yeah,
They're going
maybe
to have
some
like,
sort of cull one episode.
yeah, I mean, they're
Double
going to have
murders. I
some
don't
sort of
know.
like, yeah, it's like mass murder. They're going to knock out, three people at once or something like that. Or
Yeah.
I, I don't know how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's very strange.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like the season also. It is hard to say, I mean, obviously season one was a year ago, so I don't remember it fully. Especially the beginning. One reason I do like it is we're all, I feel, on an even playing field. Whereas like before, if you were a New Zealander, you knew half the cast right off the bat because they had been on Dancing with the Stars or they had been on a poker show or they had been on some other, show. Here, nobody knows anyone, so they have to explain who everyone is rather than just assume you know them.
Yeah.
And you also don't have a situation where, like last season, we had some of the pseudo celebrities talking about, well, she can't just be a hairdresser. There must be more to her than that. Why would they just put a hairdresser on the show? And it's like, no, everybody here has normal jobs,
Mhm.
and And I think the money will be worthwhile to all of them, which it was not necessarily worthwhile to everybody last season.
Yeah.
One guy was just going to give it all away to charity if he had won. So, so yeah, I'm enjoying it. I like the mix of personalities. Obviously, there are some people, like I don't think we mentioned Winnemoo's name until I mentioned who he voted for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, 22 people is a lot. Um, so we'll see how they handle that. I I do like that we saw, different strategies. We talked about that. I think there were two initial strategies at play here. Andrew and Ben, as we discussed, are using the correct strategy of getting close to a traitor so they'll hopefully be protected. Terry, on the other hand, came out guns blazing and said a couple times that his strategy was to get out a traitor right away. Well, Terry's gone, and I think Andrew and Ben are in good positions. As Bree told us afterwards, Terry shot himself in the foot. And yeah, it is never a good idea to come out guns blazing like that because you're pulling the target to yourself. Even if you're 100% right, as Terry was, it's still it's too risky.
Yeah.
You know.
There's kind of another strategy at play I noticed from someone, and it's actually from one of the traitors. So Whitney, although I have a feeling she won't last all the way till the end, I think she's doing too much. I did notice that on the way into banishment, she was speaking in her interview and she said, "Oh, some people are quite suspicious of Jane. I want to stick with Jane, but if that's the way the vote's going, I
Right.
might have to just turn on her." And so I thought, well, that's quite savvy of her to already know
Mm-hmm.
that as a traitor, maybe you just have to see which way the wind blows and flip at the last minute. So I thought it was quite wise of her not to say, I'll stick with my fellow traitors until the end, no matter
Right.
what. I thought, well, she's probably doing the smart thing by going with the group. So
Yeah. 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 Now, the other closing thought I have is, we talked about it already, so I don't want to belabor the point too much, but it boggles my mind that people think going for a shield is an indication that someone is a traitor. Every faithful should want a shield. Terry explained to us why he wanted it, and it made perfect sense. He knew he was coming hard for Jane, and if he missed, he wanted protection. I'm not sure he explained that to others, but yes, that, maybe if he had, it would have been a good reason, not to target him. But a traitor going for a shield doesn't do squat at this point. It's, like we said. So those who are saying otherwise are either strategically wrong or they're doing it with an ulterior motive, as Jane was.
yeah, I would agree with that.
So, so yeah, I'm looking forward to the next couple of episodes and trying to figure out, like we said, how they're going to whittle it down quickly enough. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm intrigued to find out how it's going to play out. We do have a few more things to talk about before we go. Firstly, we actually have a question from a listener to discuss. So Kai, who is a loyal listener of the podcast, hi Kai, has sent me a message on Instagram saying, "I'm currently watching international versions of The Traitors, Traitors Flanders Season 2, which I think is Traitors Belgium to me.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, is the only season for now in which there is no prize fund, i.e., no prize money up for grabs at all. Missions instead decide armory access. TV viewers are also in with a chance to win €5,000 by playing along with the show weekly and guessing what happens next. What do you think of this, and would you like to see this played out in seasons like USA or UK?"
So is
So,
there no prize money, or is it that the winner gets a predetermined prize amount?
Kai's suggesting there is no prize money at all. You because it's it's all famous people, all celebrities. They're just playing for the title of the winner of the Traitors. And
Well,
I
and I'm sure they have contracts
and
that
a
say,
fee. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, you get so much per episode, and so of course sticking around longer means yeah.
yeah. I actually already kind of talked about this on the most recent episode of the podcast with my guest Jessica, because we were talking about the fact that there will be well, it's all but confirmed by the BBC that in 2025 the UK will also do an all celebrity version of the Traitors. And we both, Jessica and I both guessed that because it's on the BBC and uh, because that's sort of the way that most celebrity shows and the reality competition shows in the UK go, there most likely will not be a prize for
Hmm.
a monetary prize for the celebrities for that. So in the UK we have like the show I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here,
Hmm.
and that the winner of that doesn't win money. They just win the title of King of the Jungle or Queen of the Jungle. Or we have Celebrity
Well,
Big Brother.
that's worth more than money.
Exactly. And we have like Celebrity Big Brother, and there's no monetary prize for that. You're just the winner of Celebrity Big Brother. And Strictly Come Dancing, which is our version of Dancing with the Stars. It's all celebrities.
Hmm.
You don't win money. I mean, again, yes, they will be paid money to appear on the show, but they don't win a cash
Right.
prize.
They're
So
paid and they're hoping it will jumpstart their careers.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, the what was it? The second place winner of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here became the host of Survivor. So
Exactly, exactly. So to Kai's question, what do we think of there not being a prize fund? I think, yeah, that this happens already in the UK with celebrity shows.
mhm.
David, I don't know if you have thoughts about it.
It wouldn't work in the US, I don't think. There has to be money and there has to be I mean, even the celebrity version yes, are mostly, not all, but mostly former reality TV people. Well, they're there for the money. They're not trying to get an acting career jump started. They're not trying to get a new record deal.
Mm,
They're there for the money. So, I'm sure they all get, uh, uh, you know, a certain amount appearance fee, but they also want the prize money.
yeah.
So,
And and in that case, I mean, if in non-celebrity versions and civilian versions, I can't imagine there not being a monetary prize.
no, me neither.
Yeah. So Kai, thank you for your question.
Mhm.
And listeners, at any point, if you have questions for David and I about the show, please send them to me. I'll tell you in a few moments how you can do that. Before we get to that final point, David, we have unfinished business because we have been playing a game. We've been playing the Trader Traitor. I have lied to you during our discussion today. Have you lied to me?
I have, and it's disappointing to hear that you have lied to me.
Is that because you have lost faith in me as a person or because you haven't spotted my lie?
Both.
Well, I'll give you some thinking time because I have written down a few suggestions of what I think
Yes,
you may have lied about.
I saw you writing a few times. I was like, hmm.
So some of my notes were about other things, but I did write down a few things I thought you could be fibbing about. Um, you, I have three guesses, so I'm going to read them out and then I'm going to stick with one of them.
I'm not a genie. You don't get three tries, you know.
No, they're not. I'm just throwing them out there. You don't have to
I know.
respond. Um, you talked a few times about no, not traitors. Survivor New Zealand, which I do
Hmm.
believe you existed, unless that was a lie that it never existed at all. Because I think you've talked about it before. You talked about being friends with a Survivor New Zealand winner. You talked about two contestants on Survivor New Zealand being secret friends, knowing each other. I wondered if maybe some of that was made up. But I'm going to go with something that you said that I was really surprised at because I don't think you've ever mentioned this before, and I was really surprised that you've never mentioned it. You said that you play Dungeons and Dragons and you still play it once a month and you played it in college or something. And I thought, how? I don't think David's ever said this to me. Was that your lie?
Which part?
The part about you still playing it once a month.
Yeah, that was. I knew it too. I was like, he is going to pick up on this. I shouldn't put this in there, but I could not think of another place to drop a lie. So
Have you
I
have you ever played Dungeons and
oh
Dragons?
yeah, no, the
Okay.
part about everything else that I said in that statement was true, which was
Okay.
why I said which part. Except I haven't played in years. I still have, all the books and everything. I'd love to play if someone knows of a good game, let me know. But I haven't played in a long time. But yes,
Okay.
I had been playing since middle school, so junior
Okay.
high we call it. So
Because you did start talking about like classes and
right,
sorcerers and clerics, and I thought, well, he knows these terms, so
yes.
but maybe he just knows that as a casual fan. But hey, I thought between all that podcasting and TikTok videos, how have you got time to play Dungeons and Dragons as well? I thought this is impossible.
I have time. I just don't have a game currently.
Now,
So
any idea what I lied to you about in our game?
I literally have zero notes on what you lied about. I can't even remember you talking about anything non-game related. I was so focused on, this episode and everything else. I'm sure you mentioned something about other seasons, and it's probably that. I just, I'm going to have to give up on this one. I just don't remember.
Well, I did lie about something game related. I lied about
Okay.
something in the show, sort of. It was very early on, and I lied about a contestant. I said that Donna worked in education, and that's what it said on her
Mm.
Traitors New Zealand Instagram biography, and I invented that. There's no such thing about her working in education.
Ah, okay. I should have caught that, but I was thinking about that. I mean, I hadn't looked at their Instagram, so um
I mean, I've never ever done it up until this point, but I think now we should start keeping a score and have a league table, and that
oh,
would mean
sure.
I'm winning so far.
Now, yeah, because I was winning all the time up till now. But now you want to start keeping score.
No.
I see how it is.
Yeah.
We have any listeners who want to go back and tally the times that
No, 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 no. No time for that. New season, new rules. Uh, Now, I mentioned that if listeners want to ask a question, they can get in touch. Here's how they can do that for the podcast. You can send me a message on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube at the Trade Hour Podcast. And you can also obviously follow and subscribe. You could send me a message on X at the Trade Hour Pod. And you can email me at the tradehourpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you can leave a review on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're listening, that would be appreciated too. One final thing as well for me is that if you are enjoying the podcast and you want to help me keep it running, you might want to send a little donation, as so many lovely listeners have done already, to the coffee page. That's ko-fi slash no, that's not right. ko-fi.com/ Matthew Keeley. And the link to that is in the episode description. David, where can we find out all of the wonderful things you're doing?
I'm all over the place on social media and reality TV podcasting. You can find all of my various accounts through my link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE in the URL there. Um, or you can find me directly on Twitter and Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, on Threads as at David Bloomberg TV. And the TV has to be on there because it's connected to Instagram. And for Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, I am at David Bloomberg TV. On all of those, I post at least one, often more, reality TV short videos every day. Most recently, they've been a combination of The Mole Season 2, which is on Netflix, U.S. Survivor flashback videos from older seasons, and of course now the Traitors New Zealand. As I mentioned, on YouTube, I have over 30,000 subscribers, which is great, but for some reason, the algorithm doesn't show the videos to all 30,000 subscribers. So need more people to, keep going there and, everywhere. And then US Big Brother will be restarting in a couple weeks. So I will, at that point, be back weekly on the Rob Has a Podcast Network with my Why Blank Lost podcasts. And I'll be doing a preview podcast before it begins. We just don't know when because US Big Brother, you never know when they're going to release the cast. They might release it a week ahead of time. They might release it a day ahead of time. You just don't know with them. So it's almost as bad as UK television, where they're like, hey, we have this show coming up, but we're not going to tell you when until it's like almost on your TV.
Yeah. Genius Game, we're looking at you.
Yes, exactly. Well, they did it for UK Survivor too. It was like, UK Survivor's coming, UK Survivor's here. Like, wait, what happened? Where'd the time in between go?
David, thank you so much for joining me today. I don't know if we've actually arranged this, but will you rejoin me for the next couple of episodes?
Absolutely, we'll be here. Yeah, we'll be here. I'll be happy to be here for the 4 weeks that we're apparently doing this. I also want to note this is, we're recording this on July 3rd, which means it'll probably be posted on July 4th, which in the US is known as Independence Day. And who are we independent from? Those damn British. So, this is the day we beat you, and, I do want, a little behind the scenes thing here. Matthew claimed that I froze on the Zoom when I said this the first time. I think he was just trying to prevent me from talking about this moment in history.
Not at all, not at all. I thought you were going to say something else. I thought you were going to say tomorrow is July 4th, which is election day in the UK.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's okay.
General election tomorrow. So the next time you and I are recording, David, we hopefully will have a new government. Hooray!
We already got a new government in the US. Just the Supreme Court just decided it. It's the same people, but they elected a king. They they decided someone was a king. We're going back to the days of King George. So
yeah, wild, absolutely wild. Until next time, then, we'll be back to talk about episodes 3 and 4 of Traitors New Zealand. Listeners, keep us on your radar.
And stay traitorous.